It's time for my favorite part of the Rangers offseason. No, it's not the minor league Rule 5 draft. No, it's not the big signings. It's time to rank my Rangers' top 30 prospects.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, on today's show, we are ranking the top 30 Rangers prospects, starting with numbers 25 through 30. We'll talk a little bit about the farm as a whole as well. But before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now, I said this at the top of the show, and I truly do mean it. This is my favorite part of hosting Locked On, is just being able to do my own top 30 prospect rankings. Because the first year that I started really covering baseball in earnest was 2014. And, the big league product was not very good at that point. And honestly, for most of my years doing this podcast, been doing this since 2019, the Rangers have not been particularly good. And so what do you do when the big league club isn't good? You go to the hope in the minors. You go deep into the prospects. So this year, the Rangers farm is not as deep as it's been in years past. I started with 20 prospects, and then I think the last 3, 4, not quite 5 years, but I think the last 4 years been doing 30 prospects. And this year, you'll see it when I get into prospects 25 through 30, that it's not quite as easy to just rattle off guys that I feel really, really good about all the way 1 through 30. Now, the top end of the system, guys like Kumar Rocker, like Sebastian Walcott, Alejandro Rosario, even Emiliano Teodo, and Malcolm Moore, Jack Leiter, like, those are guys I feel really good about. The middle of the system, there's some decent names there. You get to the bottom, and unfortunately, there's a lot of relievers and guys who are not really projected to be anything but relievers in this system. But hey, the Rangers are starting to figure out pitching development, and there are a lot of these guys that, even though they do project as relievers, they could be pretty darn good ones. Now, before we get into 25 through 30, I want to just throw out some honorable mentions, some guys who I considered but didn't quite make the cut for the top 30. There are, alas, only 30 spots, and but these guys, I think, deserve some love. I want to start with Chandler Pollard, who's a really interesting prospect. The Rangers drafted in the 5th round back in 2022 out of Woodward Academy in College Park, Georgia. A guy who is from Kennesaw, Georgia, who is just really interesting as a prospect, has one tool that's really, really loud, actually possibly 2, that are plus to maybe even double plus, and that's his glove and his speed. Last year, he stole 39 bags, only caught 5 times. The year before that, he stole 21 bags, only caught twice. That was his first full season of ball. Last year, those 39 steals in 96 games. Can he hit? He's fast. He's got a really good glove, and not just a good glove at one position, but multiple. He is possibly an elite glove at second base and center field. And now, traditionally, second base has not been thought of as a premium defensive position, but it's kind of becoming one as of late. I mean, we see how valuable Marcus Semion's defense is at the big league club, and there's a lot of other really, really elite defensive second basemen, which for years in the past hasn't been the case, but with the banning or toning down of the shift, it's become an important defensive position. Guys like Andres Jimenez, guys like Bryce Terang, who is with the Milwaukee Brewers, especially Marcus Semien, who's one of the best in the big leagues. And I wish that the Guardians had traded Andres Jimenez to the National League, so maybe Marcus could win some more Gold Gloves at second base. But Pollard is also an potentially an elite defensive center fielder, plays a little bit of short and third. Can he hit? Again, I don't know. Is there power potential? Maybe he's 6'2", but he's an interesting guy nonetheless. Josh Steven, a local kid who the Rangers didn't protect on their 40-man roster before the Rule 5. Thought he might get a look from somebody in the Rule 5. Didn't. Doesn't throw particularly hard, but knows how to pitch. Was one of those undrafted 2020 signees from, I believe it was DeSoto. He has been really solid. Not the best year last year, but I think he's still got the potential to maybe a back-end starter, and that's a guy definitely worth mentioning. Dane Acker, a guy with a really good upside, and I think he's finally just going to be a reliever. He might be in the Rangers' pen at the big league level this year, and I think he could be an effective big league reliever after years of, I don't know what this guy is. It turns out he might just be pretty solid reliever, and that's worth mentioning. And then lastly, Blaine Krim, the big Bama boy slugging first baseman, had a rough first half of the season, really, really great second half of the season. I don't think he's going to make the big leagues with Texas. I wouldn't be surprised if some team might make a trade for him this offseason, or at least at some point. Maybe he's the kind of guy who goes over to Japan, hits a bazillion home runs, comes back, gets a chance at the big leagues, but a guy who I really like as a person and as a hitter. Now let's get into the top 30, starting with number 30, Brock Porter. Yeah, I know, Brock Porter. You may remember that name because he signed for a record over $3 million signing bonus for a fourth-round pick. The reason he got that much money as a fourth-round pick is not because he has fourth-round talent, because he has first-round talent, but that was the year that the Rangers went way under slot with their first-round pick, the third overall pick, Kumar Rocker, and that had everything to do with Brock Porter as much as it did having to do with Kumar Rocker. Now, the Rangers were betting big on both of those guys, that, okay, there's a lot of question marks with both of these guys, and we can get two swings at for the price of, for the draft slot of one. The Rangers didn't have a second round or third round pick that year because they happened to sign Corey Seager and Marcus Semien and lost their second and third round pick, and with it a lot of bonus pool money. So they decided to take two big old swings on pitchers with high upside and a lot of question marks. With Rocker, it was more medical question marks. With Porter, it was just, they really had to rework his delivery a lot. He was a fourth-round pick out of St. Mary's Preparatory Academy in Orchard Lake Village, Michigan. A guy with incredible high school numbers. He's 6'4", 208 pounds, and he threw, I say threw because I'm not sure that he does anymore, a fastball that sat in the mid-90s, got into the upper 90s, and still does have an excellent changeup. And that was a lot of the reason for his success, his first pro season in Down East Low A in 2023, where he had an ERA south of 2.5, 69 and a third innings, 95 strikeouts to 42 walks. And this year, after that decent season, still a big problem with the walks. The Rangers really had to rework that delivery. There was a lot of, head thwack. He was not really looking at the catcher when he was releasing the ball, which makes it hard to be consistent. But he had success in his first year at age 20 in Down East in full season ball. Solid stuff. They say, okay, well, let's start you a little bit higher next year. Let's put you in Hickory. And it only took 3 games for the Rangers to realize, oh boy, he's not ready for this level. He is just not feeling that command. He also lost a lot of the velocity on his fastball. He did scrap his curveball for a slider that was more effective, but he just lost the strike zone. 14 walks per 9 innings in 8 1/3 innings of work at Hickory, and the Rangers said, okay, we need to rework some stuff. Let's send you to the Complex League. He pitched in 5 games there, had an ERA of over 7, 11 innings there, 11 walks. In the Complex League for a 21-year-old. Not great. Really, honestly, disastrous season. It was just awful. 19 1/3 innings. That's all he pitched. And it wasn't due to injuries. No, it wasn't due to injuries. It was due to this guy literally could not find the strike zone. And the only reason that he's still on here is because of his prodigious potential. His changeup is still elite. He's still, very big. I would pretty much give up all hope on him being a starter at really any point, even a back-end starter. your hope is that he figures out how to throw strikes again, that they can get that delivery reworked. Maybe the slider can be a decent offering. Maybe if you're super, super hopeful he gets back to some kind of starting role, but this was just an unmitigated disaster of a season. But he's still young. He's still yet to turn 22. He'll turn 22 on June 3rd next year. And there's no such thing as a pitching prospect because things like this happen. That's why that term exists. It's because of guys like this, guys with this kind of potential. His potential when he was drafted was legit top half of the rotation pitcher, maybe even number one. But there was a long way to go because high school pitchers are very, very risky. And this is why they're risky. It was an awful season for him. He's still on the top 30. I don't know if he will be at midseason. I have no idea where they start him. I have no idea what becomes of him. The upside of number one starter, just don't even think about that anymore. Just get him back to throwing strikes, and then we'll see if he could end up being a really, really nasty fastball, changeup, maybe slider, elite back-end reliever. But at this point, he's still a long ways away from getting back to that. He has to find himself and also find the strike zone first. Coming up, we're going to look at a few more actual relief prospects, some of which could be helping the Rangers pen in the big leagues this year. Talk about all that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. You got all kinds of baseball odds up right now. The Rangers' regular season win total for 2025 is at under 85.5 wins. I feel pretty good on the over on that one right now. They are also tied with the Mariners for the second favorite to win the AL West at plus 210. They also have the 9th best odds to win the World Series at plus 2,300. The Astros somehow falling to the 8th best odds at plus 1,800. Interesting stuff going on over there. You can check out all the odds on FanDuel.com to join today. You can start with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, we'll be back doing the next 6 prospects in my top 30. Yeah, this year I'm going a little differently as opposed to 3 episodes with 10 apiece, going to 5 episodes with 6 apiece. A little more time to dig into the nuances of each of these players because I kind of felt like the last few years I have been rushing through it just a little bit. Now, let's get into the number 29 prospect on this list, Bryan Magdaleno, a left-handed pitcher heading into his age 24 season. Doesn't turn 24 till February 22nd. And you may be thinking, okay, a 24-year-old left-handed pitcher that's pretty much just a reliever and has been since age 21. What's so special? What's so special about this guy? Well, he's a lefty. He throws in the upper 90s. Sits mid-90s, touches in the upper 90s, and has a nasty, nasty slider. And when you're left-handed and you do that, even if you're a little bit older, your age doesn't really matter as much when you're a relief prospect. And yeah, this is about to be 3 different, well, I guess 4 pure, pretty much only have hope in them as pure relievers at this point forward kind of guys. But Magdaleno is a guy who I thought the Rangers needed to protect on their 40-man roster ahead of this Rule 5 draft, a guy who they didn't protect. And I thought there's no way a lefty, even with some, a little bit of control command issues that he had to start out the season in down east, 5.6 walks per 9 in 25 games down there, which is where he played the vast majority of his games. I thought, okay, this is not a guy who usually survives the Rule 5 draft. Someone will take a chance on a lefty who throws in the upper 90s, has a good breaking ball, and I believe has a changeup as well. But alas, nobody did. It's really thankful for the Rangers because I'm not sure he's ready for the big leagues right now, but by the end of the season, I would not be surprised. This is a guy who had an incredible season going from down east all the way up to Frisco. Didn't allow a single earned run in his final 11 games, which were combined in Frisco and Hickory. Also looked pretty decent in the playoffs. Pitched in 4 games for Frisco. In those 4 games, no earned runs, 1 hit, 4 innings pitched, 0 walks, and 7 strikeouts. This guy was downright dominant. And in 7 games in High A Hickory, he didn't allow a single hit in 8 innings of work. Just 2 walks, 14 strikeouts. The guy was downright unhittable. Yet a 20-game stretch where he did not allow an earned run. This was an exceptional season from Magdaleno, and we'll see if he starts the season in Frisco. I mean, granted, it was only 4 games that he pitched in Double-A last year. I believe he might have pitched 1 or 2 in the playoffs. I wish that Baseball Reference would just count those playoff games towards his statistics during the regular season. But alas, that's not how that works. But Magdaleno listed at 6'1", 202 pounds. There's not much more to it. He's a lefty who could be a pretty good reliever. And at this point, with the Rangers system being where it is, in years past, you'd ideally not rather have a 24-year-old in Double-A who is a reliever in your top 30 prospects. But if you're going to have one, Bryan Magdaleno is a pretty darn good one. Now, number 28, another guy who is purely a reliever, Skylar Hales. Number 28 prospect in this Rangers system. He is 23 years old, just turned 23 in October. It's Rangers' 4th round pick in that 2023 draft. I believe that was the 2nd pick that the Rangers made. No, it was the 3rd pick that the Rangers made because they gave up one of those draft picks in the 2nd round because they had a free agent that they signed who had a qualifying offer attached to him. Also, the reason they drafted a reliever in the 4th round is not just because he was really good, but usually you don't draft relievers that high unless you are trying to use that bonus slot money to sign somebody very, very good, which the Rangers did do in that 2023 draft. There was a guy who they picked with their 1st pick, 4th overall, guy named Wyatt Langford, who they gave a whole lot of money to. And yeah, whatever they did for the rest of that draft is a good draft. But Hales is I believe the 3rd reliever drafted in that 2023 draft. Draft 100 more times in this little thing. Anyway, he is nicknamed Clark Kent. He is listed at 6'4", 220 pounds. And that nickname Clark Kent is because the dude is straight up built like Superman. If there was a ranking for the top 30 most handsome Rangers prospects, Skylar Hales would be number 1 on that list. Not particularly meaningful for his baseball career, but still, nice little feather in the cap. Guy throws 2 pitches, fastball, slider. When you're a reliever, you only really need 2 pitches, and if they're both really good, then you are an elite reliever. If one of them is really good and the other is okay, you're a fine reliever. And at this point, that's kind of where he is. He's got a fastball and a slider. The fastball, I know it only sits 94 to 97. You may see that on the radar gun and think, how is this guy a top 30 prospect? He averages, 95, 96 with the fastball, 94 to 97. So pare it down to 95, 96. He does touch triple digits with the fastball, but it is the deception. It is the movement. It is the everything, the qualities about that fastball besides just velocity. Although the velocity is solid, I would rather it, sit 99 to 103. But, if it's not going to do that, it plays up like that because of the deception, because of the arm angle, because of everything else, the other characteristics about the fastball. And he also commands it decently well. He's not a reliever who walks a bazillion guys. He just doesn't do that. In the minor leagues in 2 seasons so far, 51 games, 67 and 1/3 innings, only 2.5 walks per 9, 10.3 Ks per 9. Now, the story with him is that he needs that slider to be better. It just does. It needs to be more of a chase pitch. It needs to be more of a swing and miss pitch. At this point, it's fine. It's big league, maybe average, big league average potential. Right now, it's not quite big league average. It's a slider in the mid 80s, so there's a lot of, velocity difference between the fastball and the slider, and they really have to respect that fastball. He throws it about 75% of the time. If he can get that slider to be a plus pitch, this is an elite reliever. The Rangers have struggled to develop elite relievers. So that's why this guy's important. That's why this guy is on the top 30. He could be in the Rangers' pen by the end of this year, and maybe even by the middle of this year. I mean, who knows? The Rangers have shown a real ability to improve sliders among their minor league players. That is one thing tangibly that you can point to, a big reason why the Rangers were able to have so much success with so many different pitching prospects last year. A lot of guys who had pretty good fastballs and decent changeups and other pitches, they got a lot better with their sliders, and that led to some big developmental wins from guys like Winston Santos and other guys, a couple of left-handed pitchers who I'll talk about later on this week. But this is a guy with elite back-end relief potential, at the very least, pretty solid mid-leverage reliever, and while that's not super exciting for a number 28 prospect, it's not a bad thing to have. I'm going to talk about another guy who I'm pretty darn sure is going to pitch in the major leagues this year, and actually already has pitched in the major leagues for one hot minute last year, right after this. This show is brought to you by Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories this year was a surprise attending a baseball game. You know, the energy and excitement at a minor league baseball game, major league baseball game, getting to go see Kumar Rocker's home debut, that was just so much freaking fun. And now Game Time has made it even easier getting tickets to your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Plus, the app's got all-in pricing. It shows you the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And you know, I love me some transparency. Game Time is so great. I use this all the time when I'm looking to get live events, tickets to live events for literally anything. I am always plugging Game Time, whether it is in a sponsored ad read or even in my real life. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. I'll be back 5 episodes this week, only talking about my top 30 prospects if the Rangers do make a big old signing, like maybe getting a Chris Martin or a Kirby Yates, or if there's some big old news about Roki Sasaki, I'll drop a bonus episode in there. But this week, 5 episodes, all talking about Rangers prospects. And the next guy on this list talking about the number 27 prospect in my system. That is Marc Church, the right-handed reliever who I was very convinced was going to make the Rangers bullpen out at camp. Partly because he was just the talk of the town in Rangers spring training, also because he just looked incredible, and also because the Rangers bullpen was not necessarily the deepest at the big league level this year. Back-end talent, very good. Middle of the bullpen, could use some work. And at this point, the middle of the Rangers bullpen is much more bulked up with some of these signings, but I would not be surprised if Marc Church even made the opening day roster. I would honestly be a little surprised if he didn't. He did make his big league debut, has 3 whole days of service time, made that big league debut in the final game of the season against the Angels. 1 inning, 1 hit, 1 strikeout, 0 runs a career, 0 ERA. This guy is a big leaguer, as my friend Tepid Participation would say. His dude status is officially revoked. If you don't know what that means, go follow Tepid on Twitter and learn a thing or two, because that is a guy who knows a whole lot about this Rangers farm system and the farm system in general. But Marc Church, a native of Atlanta, Georgia, drafted out of North Atlanta High School in, of course, Atlanta, an 18th round pick back in the 2019 amateur draft. This is a guy listed at 6'3", 189 pounds. He throws 2 pitches. One of them is a fastball that gets all the way up there in the upper 90s. But the real pitch, the money pitch for Marc Church, is the slider. I would say if you're not qualifying Kumar Rocker's breaking ball as a slider, which I don't think you should because it is a curveball or it is a rock ball, whatever it is. All the way up and down through this Rangers minor league system and major league talent, the only slider I can say for sure that's better than Marc Church's is Jacob deGrom's. Now, that's because the Rangers have not yet signed Roki Sasaki. If they do that, then I would say Marc Church's slider is also behind Roki Sasaki's slider. But that is to say, it is a really darn good pitch. This is a guy who was, sitting in the mid-90s in spring training, going multiple innings, getting lots of strikeouts. Missed most of this year, though, with injury. That's the main reason that he didn't make his big league debut a little bit sooner. Had a right shoulder strain, put him on the IL on April 18th. Then on May 1st, he was transferred to the 60-day IL. He was initially just on the 7-day IL and then realized, oh boy, that is going to take some time to get back. He didn't pitch again until August 11th, and those shoulder injuries are always super scary for a pitcher. Again, he is a reliever only, but I think he could be a darn good one. That slider is legit nasty as heck and can get big league hitters out right now and has already gotten 3 big league hitters out in his big league career. I think he will get many more. And you look at the back end, the lower end of this pen, guys like Matt Festa, Daniel Robert, Jacob Latz. I would honestly take Marc Church over 2 of those 3 guys right now, the 2 righties. I would take Marc Church over them. It might take a little bit of time. You got to make sure that he's healthy from that shoulder injury. But this is a guy who could be a pretty darn good reliever. The ceiling isn't as high as Skylar Hales or Bryan Magdaleno in terms of his upside. Maybe it's comparable with Magdaleno, but Magdaleno's a lefty, and guys who are lefty and throw in the mid-90s with a nasty slider, they don't grow on trees. But Marc Church, I really like this kid. I think it could be a medium-sized part of the Rangers' pen this year, and I would be very shocked if he got fewer than 20 innings in the big leagues this year. Maybe fewer than 15, but still, this is a guy who has made his big league debut, and I really like what he brings to the Rangers. Now, the number 26 prospect in this Rangers system, this is, of all these guys, I think this is the guy that I'm most excited to talk about today in this grouping of 6. This number 26 prospect, David Davalillo. Davalillo, yes. I'm kidding. There are so many L's in that name, but this is another right-handed pitcher. This is the one guy of these guys, of all of these guys. Maybe if you squint and things go really, really right for Brock Porter and he remembers how to throw strikes again, then he could be a starter. But Davalillo is a guy who I am convinced is going to be a starter, going to stick as a starter, signed out of Venezuela. He is fantastic this year. He was one of the leaders in ERA in all of the minors. Finished the year a 1.88 ERA in 110 and a third innings. 113 strikeouts. He is 21, heading into his age 22 season. He has already turned 22. He did that on September 21st. This is a guy who doesn't have overwhelming stuff. No, it's not overwhelming. The fastball sits in the 93, 94 range. He's got a slow curveball that's somewhere around 74. He's also got a faster version of that curveball that's 79, 78. He's also got a changeup that averages around 83 miles an hour. But this guy can pitch. He just can straight up pitch. And, he's very young. He did much better in his final few games in terms of strikeout rate at Hickory, where he was 2 years younger than the average pitcher in the Sally League versus Down East. In Down East, he had 8.9 Ks per 9, 10.2 in 5 games started at Hickory. Still a really good ERA there as well, a 2.10 ERA in Hickory versus 1.79 in Down East. This is a guy who also, like I said, 2.6 walks per 9, only 0.2 homers per 9, 3 home runs in 110 innings is hard to do. I know the Carolina League and the South Atlantic League are both kind of pitcher-friendly, but they're not that pitcher-friendly. And also, pitching 110 innings as a 21-year-old, that's a good sign that the Rangers believe in his durability. A really good sign because he didn't pitch all that much in the first 4 years or so of his professional career. His first game with the Rangers in the Rangers system was in the Dominican Summer League as a 19-year-old. He pitched 2 games, 2 innings there. That was it for the 2022 season. Then in 2023, he pitched in 21 and 2/3 innings. Not a whole lot of innings there, and nothing too spectacular. Spent the time between Arizona Complex League and then 1 game in Down East. Had an ERA of 3.3. Not that inspiring, but this year just really a breakout season for Davalillo. I've talked a lot about a bunch of different pitchers in this Rangers system over the course of last season that were all having breakout years. I think I only barely mentioned Davalillo, and he had a really, really good season. I mean, a couple of truly incredible games. I mean, multiple 10 strikeout games. Of his 5 games in Hickory, 2 of them he had 10 strikeouts or more. That's really darn good, including a 7-inning, 1-run, 10 strikeout performance on the 18th of August, which happens to be my parents' anniversary. Happy anniversary, Mom, Dad, if you're listening. In 9 months, 7 months, whatever, I can't do the math. And then another 10 strikeout performance in 6 2/3 innings on the 1st of September against the Asheville Tourists. What a fun name there. 85 pitches there. This is a guy who was incredibly durable. I believe that is the 2nd most innings among Rangers minor league pitchers this year. This is a really darn good season for Davalillo, and he's probably, I think, the 12th best Rangers pitching prospect in my system, just off the top of my head, doing the math there. Really, really good year for him, and I'm excited to see more from him. The breaking stuff doesn't have all that much bite on it, but again, you're putting up these kinds of numbers, you're showing that kind of durability, and you show that kind of pitchability at that age. That's an incredible sign. Would like him to add a little bit more weight. He's only listed at 6'1", 175 pounds, but again, I think this guy can stick as a starter. The last guy for this episode, number 25 prospect in the Rangers system heading into the 2025 season, is Casey Cook, the Rangers' 3rd round pick in the 2024 draft out of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He is a left-handed outfielder listed at 6 foot, 195 pounds. He hits left-handed, throws right-handed. He was born in Atlanta, Georgia. Again, this is a guy whose profile normally I don't love. A guy who doesn't have any incredibly loud tools. Is just pretty good hitter. Last year at North Carolina, 64 games, a little over 300 plate appearances there, 18 bombs at an OPS north of 1,000, hit over 340, on base over 430, slugged over 600. Not a whole lot of pop there in terms of, big league potential future value. Maybe more of a 15 if you're really banking on him getting the most out of that, game power, 20 home runs at the most. The other tools are kind of fringy, knows the strike zone well, has decent walk to strikeout rate, and really did at North Carolina. 36 walks to 55 strikeouts. Not anything that's, crazy great, but again, solid. Probably profile of, if everything breaks really, really right, he's a guy who's hitting, 280 with an on base in the 330, 340 range with 15 bombs. Is a passable defender in left field. Decent base runner. David Murphy type, kind of, if things break really, really right. Again, not the sexiest profile, but still a solid guy. And if that's your 25 prospect, it starts to get a lot better. There's not as many relievers coming up later on in these shows throughout the week, but Casey Cook, the number 25 Rangers prospects, to recap, who is 25 through 30. At 30, we have Brock Porter. At 29, we have Bryan Magdaleno. 28, Skylar Hales. 27, Marc Church. 26, David Davalillo. And 25, Casey Cook. I'll be back tomorrow talking about the next 6 prospects in my top 30 Rangers prospects. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.